What's going on, guys? Now, as you all know, 5-lug is finished. It's on the car. It's ready to go. We're looking good. Everything feels good. Nice setup. I think it went really well. I have been receiving so many questions about 5-lug setups, and I feel like it deserves its own video because I have gotten more questions about will I sell my BC coilovers? No, my BC coilovers were sold like the day they came off the car. I know they were practically brand new and everybody was asking me about them, but they're long gone. So, sorry guys, no, they're sold. 2, I've been getting questions about 5-lug setups. How do I do this? How do I do this? Oh, can I use this? Can I use this? Now, there's a lot of research that has already been done that I looked through when I was making my decisions, and I will link some of the websites that I used to sort of get the ball rolling and understanding how I was going to go about the 5-lug setup. But I'm going to try to condense what I learned into a really nice little package here for everyone, just so I can answer those questions that I'm answering these questions personally by message, the ones I can, but I feel like there's a lot of questions people might not be asking them, or they're just, they're just kind of waiting. They don't want to ask me in a message. That's fine. I'll address it right here, right now, because I see the need. I'm gonna try to go over, we're gonna start with the rear, and I'm gonna go over everything I know and understand so I can explain it to you guys, and then we'll move to the front. Basically, there are a couple ways to do it. The 100 ways to skin a cat, every time the cat ends up dead, it's that sort of thing. You can do the E30 M3, which was an from factory 5-lug car, and those hubs, brakes, all that shit fit right on everything. It's not a big deal. The problem is they're expensive, hard to find, and you're not doing a brake upgrade. So that leads us to option number 2. You can do trailing arm replacements, which can either be the E36 Ti, which shares a rear trailing arm, and you can just take those trailing arms, put them in, you'll be 5-lug, and you have E36 Ti brakes, which is basically what I have, basically. You can also do, I think it's the Z3 M Coupe rear trailing arms, which is the beefiest setup that you can get. Those things are tough, but they're expensive. You'll spend more than I spent on my whole setup on those arms. Okay, now after we move from trailing arms, so we've got E30, just the hubs and stuff, you can do the whole trailing arms, and now we can move to what I did, which was just the hubs. I mean, you replace the bearings with the hubs, obviously, but you just replace the hubs, you replace the brake setup, and you're done. Pretty easy. I think that's a really good setup for most people. So here, the car is under the camera. That's why I keep looking down. Now I look like an idiot. But in my case, I use the Z3 rear hubs because, like I said earlier, I wanted them to have a wider stance. I wanted the car to have a bigger track width so it would be even with the front. I used E37 Z3 rear rotors, which is a 10mm rotor, so non-vented rotor. You lose some, you win some. And I used E36 Ti brakes. I was able to use stock caliper carriers, I was able to use stock E36 Ti caliper carriers, stock E36 Ti calipers, and stock Z3 rear hubs. Z3 rear hubs, kind of hard to find, kind of expensive. I got my set, both of them, I think it was like 90 bucks shipped to me off Panjo. So you gotta be looking at eBay, junkyards, that sort of thing. You gotta look. And then I just bought new brakes and I bought some used calipers, dirt cheap. Calipers like that are super cheap. Okay, I think that about covers the rear. You like doing the hub setup. You can do a Z4 hub setup, which a lot of people do, which allows you to run a bigger brake in the rear, but it throws off your whole offsets. You have to have custom wheels, that sort of thing, or spacers. So I tend to shy away from that, although, some people really want that brake setup. More power to you. Look into all that on your own. I'm just trying to condense it all into a quick thing. So, moving on to the fronts. I know the lighting changed, I had to open the garage door, it was getting a little stuffy in here. Moving on to the fronts. The ideal way to do it without any adapters would be you take E36 or E30 offset late model control arm bushings, those bushings with the hole closer to the actual flange that you bolt onto the car. That would work. And then you take late model lower control arms from an E36 M3. They have a different shape on the control arm. I'll try to put pictures of all of this as I talk about it. Then you take an E36 M3 knuckle and brake system. It'll fit right in there, and then you just bolt a E36 M3 strut on there, and you're good to go. That's it. Nice and simple. Front's a little easier. That is the sort of the way I did it. Now you can get away with not using a E36 M3 control arm or using E36 knuckles, fat non-M3 knuckles. You don't get both. You can't do both. You can't use a factory E30 arm, offset control arm bushings, and fat E36 non-M3 knuckles. You can't do it. The caster will be all wacky. So if you do that, then you have to get like that adapter kit, those adapter kits, those solid control arm bushings that I have, which correct the caster to a certain degree. But there's also the last way of doing it, which is you take the E30 M3 front brakes and hubs and all that kind of stuff, which, you know, is very expensive and that sort of thing. So in short, the way I would ideally, like the best possible solution for a 5-lug setup is you take E36 M3 suspension all around like I did, and you take E36 M3 brakes, rotors, knuckle, hub, control arm, all that stuff, and you put it on your E30. That would be good for the front. Then you got your caster nice and set up and you're good to go. If you have to do any caster corrections, then you would invest in some caster plates, like just for fine tuning if you really needed it. Then in the rear, the ideal thing to do in my mind is the Z3 beefy rear end upgrade, because then you get the big strong trailing arms and you get thicker rear rotors and stuff like that. But if you don't mind running spacers in the rear, you could get Z4 hubs. That's totally fine. Then you get big brakes up front, you get big brakes in the rear, you're good to go. My setup, just so everyone fully understands, E36 M3 front with a stock E30 control arm with the SRS Concepts adapters to correct the caster of having a stock E30 control arm, with a Z3 6-cylinder rear hub with TI brakes basically on the rear. So they're 10mm non-vented rotors. And one more thing that I mentioned in the videos but I never really exactly explained. I was talking a lot about running a E36 M3 rear caliper, but that caliper is meant for a 20mm vented rotor. So I would have had to install a shim to basically take up that extra space of that rotor that wasn't there anymore. So now I decided against it in the end. I figured, you know, it's the rear rotors, it'll be hardly noticeable, the difference, and I found I just used the E36 M3 rotors. Now the thing that I don't have a hell of a lot of experience on is using factory handbrake. Some setups don't allow you to use a factory handbrake. My setup does, so that's a bonus. I mean, if you want to take the tried and true method, my setup allows you to use a stock handbrake. But that's what I got, guys. I mean, read the links that I put in the description if you have any more questions, and if you still have questions, just give me a call or a message or whatever, email me, and I'll try to answer. Peace out. I hope this was helpful.